Welcome back. Today we're doing a deep dive into something pretty fascinating, the future of the Dalai Lama's institution.
Yeah, it really blends ancient spiritual practices with some very current, very urgent geopolitics.
Exactly. We're looking closely at that key statement. His Holiness the 14th Dalai Lama made back in September 2011.
And powerfully reaffirmed just this May in 2025.
Right. And what we want to unpack is what this really means, not just for Tibetans, but, well, for everyone.
Because it's more than just about one religious figure, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. It's a major strategic move asserting Tibetan religious cultural autonomy.
Directly challenging China's long-held claims of authority over this process.
Okay, so let's get into the specifics. What did the Dalai Lama actually outline?
Well, the core of that 2011 statement, the one he just reaffirmed, is that when he reaches age 90, he'll consult widely.
Consult on whether the institution of the Dalai Lama should even continue.
Precisely. And if it does continue, he made it crystal clear. The sole responsibility, the only authority for finding the next Dalai Lama.
Lies with whom exactly?
Exclusively with members of the Godin Phodrang Trust. That's his official office, essentially, his people.
And he explicitly pushed back against outside interference.
Very strongly. He rejected any politically motivated candidates, particularly any chosen by China. He stated, no one else has any such authority to interfere. Period.
That's quite definitive. And he's thought about alternatives too, hasn't he? Ways to ensure the lineage continues freely.
Absolutely. He's shown remarkable foresight. He's mentioned the possibility of reincarnation happening in the free world outside Tibet.
Potentially even as a woman.
Yes, or even using what's called emanation, basically, appointing a successor while he's still alive.
All strategies aimed at preventing Chinese control over the next reincarnation.
Exactly. He also plans to leave clear written instructions to guide the process.
And this ties into another key move he made back in 2011, right? Devolving his political power.
Yes, that was crucial. Handing political leadership to the elected Central Tibetan administration, it separated the spiritual role from direct political entanglement.
Smart. Insulating the spiritual succession. But that brings us to China's perspective, which is different.
Radically different. This is where you see the real clash. China views this entirely through the lens of state sovereignty.
So how do they justify their involvement?
They insist they have the authority over the reincarnation process. They mandate that searches must happen within Chinese territory.
And they bring up the golden urn.
Yes, they point to the Golden Urn lottery system, claiming it was established by the King Emperor Qinlong back in 1792 to regulate things, and they require central government approval.
But how historically accurate is the emphasis on this golden urn? Our sources mention something about that.
That's a really important point. The sources note it was, quote, scarcely used by Tibetans until 2007.
So relatively recently in the grand scheme of things. And His Holiness's own recognition didn't use it.
Correct, which suggests it's perhaps more of a modern political tool for Beijing than a deeply embedded Tibetan tradition they're upholding.
And they formalized their stance.
Oh, yes. Their 2007 Order Number 5 explicitly mandates government authorization for High Lamas to reincarnate. It asserts absolute state control.
And their view of the current Dalai Lama.
Beijing accuses him of separatist activities. They've made it clear they intend to select the next Dalai Lama themselves.
Using their own appointed Panchen Lama to legitimize their choice.
That appears to be the plan, which leads to this stark paradox. You have an officially atheist state government claiming ultimate authority over a sacred spiritual succession.
Viewing it almost like a battleground.
They've reportedly framed it as part of a protracted war to cement control over Tibet, neutralize Tibetan identity, and ensure their chosen candidate is accepted. It's about political legitimacy as much as anything.
A protracted war. Wow. So let's talk stakes. What does this mean for people on the ground and internationally?
For Tibetans, both inside Tibet and in exile, there's widespread rejection of Chinese interference. The big fear is a dual Dalai Lama scenario.
Like what happened with the Panchen Lama back in 1995, a crisis of legitimacy.
Exactly. A Chinese-appointed Dalai Lama versus one recognized through the traditional process outlined by His Holiness. It would be deeply divisive.
And the international implications. This isn't just a regional issue.
Not at all. It directly impacts countries like India, which hosts the Dalai Lama and a large Tibetan exile community, and the U.S. too.
The U.S. has legislation on this, right?
Yes, the Tibetan Policy and Support Act of 2020 specifically includes sanctions against Chinese officials who interfere in the succession process.
So any candidate appointed by Beijing would likely face significant international backlash.
Almost certainly. It would be widely seen as a major violation of religious freedom, a human rights issue. Condemnation would likely be swift and strong.
So, wrapping this up, this deep dive really shows a fundamental conflict, doesn't it? Spiritual autonomy versus state control.
It truly does. The Dalai Lama's careful planning is this profound attempt to protect a sacred tradition from political manipulation.
While China's actions perhaps reveal a deep-seated insecurity about its own legitimacy and control in Tibet.
Which leaves us with a really important question to ponder, perhaps for you listening. In today's world, saturated with information and, frankly, misinformation, how can we as a global community effectively support genuine religious freedom and self-determination when spiritual traditions like this become entangled in these high-stakes geopolitical conflicts? What's the path forward?